Hi, that's our presentation for today, and we're going to begin the question and answers here in a minute or so. There are a couple updates to the presentation from when that presentation was recorded. Some of them have been uh, mentioned in the chats, and we'll get to that. So first off, as of January, the amount that a person can contract for without a contractor's license did increase. It went from $500, as mentioned in the presentation, to $1,000. Once again, that is for everything: materials, labor, the entire cost of the projects. Two exceptions to that are, regardless of the price of the project, if a permit is required or if any employees are required, you will need a license. So the amount of the projects did go up for unlicensed contractor to $1,000. However, if a permit of any type is required and if you utilize employees at all, you will need a license regardless of the value of that project. Also, we added a new entity to our entities that we license. We now license tribal businesses as well. So in addition to LLCs, corporations, partnerships, we have a tribal business license also. Also, the change to examinations. We have a authorized testing vendor now that issues all exams for our examinations. And beginning in January, all fees for the examinations are paid directly to them. So even your initial testing examination that you will need with your license, all fees are paid directly to them. So you will pay your application fee to us, and then when your application is ready to go to the testing phase, you will contact the testing vendor, which you will be notified in a letter for their contact information, and then you will pay for your testing fees directly to them. And having said that, we'll start looking at our questions here. So one of the first ones was related to the $1,000 limit being upped. And as I said, yes, it has been, as of January, raised to $1,000 as long as no employees or no permitting is necessary in there. We did have a question about how long we've been doing the workshop. We've actually been doing the workshop presented today here for at least 3, maybe 4 years. Longer than that in different forms. It used to be done in person in various locations. About 3 or 4 years we went to virtual like we are doing today. And we do it every Monday, first Monday of every month. A later question was also if we, is there archives of this? Yes, as mentioned in the presentation, we archive all of these presentations that are on our YouTube channel. You can get through it either by going to YouTube and searching for the Contractor State Licensing Board and finding their channel. You can also go onto the Contractor State Licensing Board website. Go to the media tab and then click on CSLB videos, and that will take you to various videos in addition to what you're viewing today. That will take you to our YouTube channel for many of our training and informational videos. There was a mention of study guides or study materials. Once again, as in the presentation on our website, we have study materials for each classification. Those study materials also list the resource information that was done. One thing to keep in mind, there are other materials and other companies out there that will claim to prep you for the tests and examinations. CSLB has no affiliation with any school, training, or any other materials out there available to purchase in the public None of those are directly related or authorized by us. So there are information and companies out there that will tell you they can prep you for the contractors board information and examinations. We are not affiliated with any of those. Okay, so let's get down to some of the others. There was a question about education. So it looks like two questions. One was, do you need education? And once again, as explained in the presentation today, it is not necessary. However, certain degrees may garner you credit towards your education requirement of 4 years of experience. But no, there are no educational requirements for any of the classifications for the board. Another question was, so I can prove a maximum of 3 years of experience with study credits, and I would only need 1 year of work experience. That would be the case in very limited situations. There's only a few degrees out there that will garner you the full 36 months of experience from education, and then only requiring 1 year of work. There are apprenticeships in very specific classifications that will garner you 36 months of experience. But for the most part, as our chart showed in the presentation, most classifications and the experience through education will be anywhere from 18 to 24 months maximum for most things. There are a few select degrees that will garner you the 3 years of experience. We had a question on someone who is an industrial mechanic where they perform welding, electrical, and plumbing work. So we don't have an industrial mechanic classification. However, there are various classifications which do utilize multiple trades. Our C20 HVAC classification can do limited plumbing in relation to HVAC work, which can also sometimes require welding or sheet metal work for duct work. The best thing, if you are not sure of the classification that would apply to the work that you plan to do, then we have our classifications deputy. You would send all the trade work and what you're doing to classifications, and that's plural, classifications at cslb.ca.gov. And that is in the presentation as well. And they will look at the trade work that you are performing and tell you the necessary classification or classifications that you would need to hold to perform all of that. The talk of specific licenses for welding, electrical, and plumbing. Yes, for the most part, if you're going to write a contract for a specific thing, electrical only, plumbing only, then yes, you would need to hold each classification to write a contract in that specific trade work. I've been working for 22 years in different companies. Do I qualify for a waiver? So a waiver has very specific requirements. It's not experience-based, it's usually situational based. So for someone coming in for their first license, the basic waiver is a waiver of the examinations if you have held the classification that you're applying for that license for, or if you had on a previous application gone through the testing process for that classification and passed, then subsequently for the next 5 years, those exams would be good. And if you applied for the same classification again, you would be able to waiver the exams because you had already taken them. There are a few other specific waivers surrounding adding an additional class to an existing license, which can sometimes get you a waiver, but it's very specific to each one. So you would need to look in our law book and look at the provisions for a waiver that is specifically under 7065.1, which I believe was mentioned in our presentation, and see if you qualify for one of the waivers listed. Let's see. Qualification. What qualification does the certifier need to meet? So the certifier doesn't really need to meet any qualifications. They don't have to be a licensed contractor. Their only qualification is that they have firsthand knowledge of the work that you have performed, because they'll be filling out the second part of your certification of work experience. So they're attesting to the fact that they have firsthand knowledge of you performing the trade work that they're going to put down for a specific amount of time. So that's the only real qualification that the certifier needs to justify your experience. All right. I have multiple certifiers. Do we fill out multiple forms? Yes. So if different people have firsthand knowledge of your experience during different time periods, each one of them would fill out a separate certification of work experience, because that certification is going to be specific to a time period that that certifier has firsthand knowledge of the trade work that they are going to list on your certification of work experience. So if you don't have one person who has firsthand knowledge of 4 years of your experience, then you would need to do multiple certification forms with your different certifiers. How do I go to the YouTube channel? I think I covered that. You can go through it through our website, through our media tab. You can also go to YouTube, as looks like someone has put on here, and search for the CSLB and find the YouTube channel there. Are the renewal fees the same as the initial fees? No. So when you first get your license, there is an initial license fee, which just covers getting the license list issued to you. The renewal fees are a different amount that covers each 2-year period, and it is dependent upon whether you're a sole owner entity or a non-sole owner entity. Will affect the amount on that. All right. I'm buying the C16 company I've been working for the last 22 years. I will own 80% of the previous own and the previous owner 20%. Do I need to get my own C16 license, or does the company C16 transfer over to me as a majority owner? Also, the previous owner may want to keep the C16 license to perform volunteer work. Would that affect anything with the C16 license of new owner if it was transferred over? So first, no license is transferable or sellable. You may sell the company, or you may buy a company. The license is not transferable. So it's a little different with a corporation. So it's also dependent upon the entity that you own. With a corporation, you just change personnel within the corporation when a corporation is sold. We don't involve ourselves in the business side of it, just the licensing side. So whoever is the owners and operators and officers of the corporation, that license number will always remain with that corporation. With a sole owner, you could sell the business, but you will not be able to sell the license. Whoever buys your business will need to apply for their own license in a sole owner situation of selling the business. The previous owner wanting to keep the C16 license, that is not really possible if it's a corporation or an LLC, because whoever is now the owners and officers of the corporation will still have that C16 license. If he was the qualifier, he can then go out and apply and get his own C16 license, and will not have to test if he has been the qualifier of a C16 classification within the last 5 years. Always, before you sell, buy, trade, transfer a company, especially a corporation that's going to involve any changes to the status of that corporation at the Secretary of State, please contact the CSLB first, because some of the things that may happen at the Secretary of State due to transfers, mergers, conversions can cancel the license and require a new license to be done. Any questions on that specifically, reach out to our licensing email at licensing.cslb or at cslb.ca.gov, and they can deal more specifically to your situation.
So a question from Brian, it was, when can you perform the live scan? Can it be done now, or does it need to be done after the application is submitted? So you will be prompted when to complete the live scan. So once the application is received, the technician will review the application to ensure that you meet the minimum requirements. Once it is accepted, the technician will post the application, meaning it will be accepted and referred to testing. So once the application is initiated to the next steps, that's when you will receive correspondence on the next steps as to scheduling to take your exams, as well as to complete your live scan packet. Now, you don't have to do it right then and there. It is one of the last steps that you'll do prior to having the license issued, but you can do the live scan while you take the exam. So it's up to you as to when you complete it. You can do it at the last steps after you pass the examinations, or while you take the test. And then the question from Elva was, I have a master's and would like to use it for the 3 years experience. So if you want to use education as a substitute for the work experience, you can do so. It's not a 100% guarantee that your degree will be granted the full 36 months. So what you can do is you can provide your official transcripts and provide as much work experience as you have performing or supervising the trades of the classification you're applying to. So that way, we'll review the application and your education to determine if you meet the full 4 years. Now, if you're really relying on the education being 3 years and you don't have at least more than 1 year of experience, so say 2 years, for example, then you don't want to rely on education, because sometimes you may not get the full 36 months or the 3 years. So we would recommend, if you have more years, then include that in your application. Lori, your question, is there a designation or choice to apply for a tribal business license in the application? So on our new versions of the application, which is available on our website, there is a choice there to select. So it'll be on the first page, section 2, where it'll say business entity. So it'll ask you, or it'll prompt which of the application or business structure you're going for. There is a selection there where you check mark the tribal business if that's what you're applying for, and then you'll just provide the additional information that it prompts you or that it requires you to provide.
The additional question of does the tribal business license apply to Alaskan Native corporations, Alaska tribes? Currently, the law is written for California tribes. However, if you have a situation with an Alaska corporation tribe, please send your information and inquiry to the licensing at cslb.ca.gov. And we'll take a look at your particular situation so that you don't send in a application and pay the fees if it shouldn't apply to you. So reach out to licensing at cslb.ca.gov concerning applying as an Alaskan Native Corporation tribe, and we'll get you the information of whether that's possible to do the Alaska tribe as well.
The question from Marta was, can a certifier complete and sign a form online or should be hand signed? So if the question is if it can be docu-signed or wet signature, at this point, either can be acceptable. It's just as long as the certifier is the one that completes it and not the applicant themselves. There is another question from Luis that says, if I'm going to apply for a Z classification, can my business name have two names? For example, Luis and Frank Landscape, even though I will be a sole proprietor. So if you will be applying for a sole ownership license, then more than likely that business name will not be acceptable due to the fact that a sole proprietor is considered one owner, sole owner. So that wouldn't be acceptable as the business name would indicate there is more than one owner in the business. Now, if it's something that it's a family and you want to put your last name, then that's something different, but it's all on a case by case basis. So when the application is received, the technician will review it, and should the technician have any questions, they'll follow up with you via telephone, email, or mail correspondence, depending on your preference of communication.
We have a question of, I worked for multiple contractors for 5 years and then have been self-employed for the past year. How should I answer the certification work experience part 1? Question 2, I have a certifier who has direct knowledge of my work over the 6 years. So the years that you worked for the contractor is usually the easiest, because then you're just filling in who you worked for, and then the certifier is going to fill out the bottom part of the trade work that he or she has firsthand direct knowledge of the work being performed. So if you want to include your self-employed experience, that's fine. There's a check marks to mark that on the certification as well. You still have to have somebody who has firsthand knowledge of the work that you did self-employed, and sometimes they require additional project forms to be filled out to give a little more detail on those projects that you did self-employed.
The question from Gordon is, I previously had a contractor's license back in 2000, which I placed on an inactive status. Do I still have to go through the contract prices to reapply and take the test, or is there a process for removing contract to active? So that would be a bit of a loaded question. One of the questions that we would need to ask of you is, is the license still in good standing, meaning has it been renewed or has it been expired? What you could do is, if you want to email us at the licensing@cslb.ca.gov and provide as much information there as possible, such as your license number, if you still remember it. That way we can take a deep dive into it to be able to walk you through the steps on how to get your license back in active status if it's still in good standing, or if you will need to reapply if it's been expired for over 5 years.
I may have skipped over one here. I see, if I am going to apply for a C classification, can my business name have two names? For example, Lewis and Frank Landscape, even though I'll be a sole proprietor? No, as a sole proprietor, it can only indicate that there is one person involved. Yes, you may have employees, but they can't be part of the name of the business. So the business would need to indicate or not indicate that there are multiple people involved in the business name part of it. So you would just need to choose a generic, great landscaping is fine, or if you're going to use a name, one person, the person who is the sole proprietor of the license name on the business name. It could not be somebody who is not going to be listed as the sole proprietor on the business.
A question from Marta is, what if there's no personnel to complete section 4 at the moment, but expected in the future? So if you will be initially applying for, let's just say, a sole ownership, then that section, you don't really need to worry about it, just leave it blank. But if you're applying for a different business structure, such as like a corporation or an LLC, and you're the only one that will be listed on the application at the time, then you can leave it blank. And at some point in the future, you have officers in the business and you want to include them on the license, and that's where you can add them as officers. It will be a separate application that you would have to complete in the future. But if it's during the application process, as soon as the application is accepted, any officers, whether they're listed or not listed, when they want to remove someone or add someone, the system will not allow us to make any changes to the business structure or any officer. So once it's accepted, there's no way to change it, whether it's to remove or add.
The next question, I have a 4-year degree in construction management obtained in 1989. Is that adequate for meeting the requirement? I also have been in the project management role of construction for 30 years. Do I still need to secure the verification of past employment in the last 10 years, or will a copy of my degree suffice? So no degree will provide all the amount of time for your experience requirement for a license. Construction management does provide one of the most for various classifications, but once again, we can't give you a definitive answer as to how much education experience you will receive until we actually receive a copy of your official transcripts with your application. One thing to keep in mind is it doesn't matter when your experience is from. So the fact that your experience is back past the 10-year mark, that doesn't matter. You'll still get the same amount of educational experience no matter when your degree is. However, for your other experience, the actual hands-on experience that you'd be certifying on the certification of work experience, that does need to be within the last 10 years. And then you would need to have a certifier for your certification of work experience form that has firsthand knowledge of the work performed during those last 10 years.
A question from Gina is, does a certifier have to be licensed? For example, C33 painting and decorating. If the work experience was for a retail store that is also a paint distributor and the experience is painting and finishing carpentry and furniture for that store. So I believe that question was answered earlier as far as if the certifier needs to be licensed. The answer is no. Not necessarily. Now, if you worked alongside a contractor, that certifier can provide their information down at the bottom. Or if you worked alongside a company, if it's someone within the business, they can also sign on your behalf. It doesn't necessarily have to be the owner of the business. So it's anyone that has seen you do the work either by hand or supervised in the trades of the classification applied to.
All right, we have lost my place. If I have to add one or few other classifications after I obtain a license, should I apply once again or for a B license? So once you have obtained a license for any classification, you can always add to that same license later on. So if you originally apply for a C33 painting license, and then later, if you have the experience to then also get a plumbing license, or a plumbing classification, you can just add that classification if you have the experience and do the testing to add that to your existing license. You also have the option of getting a second license if you want. Some people want to keep their businesses separate for separate classifications. So once you have your license and you want to expand your business, you have the option. You can add additional licenses to your existing or additional classifications to your existing license, or you could open additional licenses for those other classifications that you want. Will full slideshow webinar be on the YouTube channel? I see November of 24 only had the question and answers uploaded. Sometimes we have technical issues that we are not able to archive the entire presentation, but normally we try to archive the entire presentation of the webinar plus the question and answers on there, but there can be some situations where we didn't get retained both the webinar and the question and answers. I'm not sure on the question for what is the website for related trade duties. As far as list of the classifications that we offer, that's both on the CSLB website as well as in the law book, which is available for free on the CSLB website, or you can purchase it from LexisNexis. And within both the website under classifications, it will give a list of relatable trades for that classification. When you are listing your trades in your certification of work experience, you want to list the trades that you have actually performed.
I'm including the actual description of classifications book, which is a digital copy. You're able to click that in the chat. So if you are unsure of which classification or which trade part you do and which classification it falls under, go ahead and click on the link for the classification list, and that way you'll be able to see which of your work falls under the classification.
We've been doing handyman work the last couple of years. How do we prove the time for a B2? So B2 is very specific that the projects that you would be utilizing towards the B2 have to be projects that included 3 trades in that one project. So to prove it, once again, will be certifications of work experience. And then if they were not all for the same person over years or time, then you would need a separate certification of work experience for the time frame and the trades certified by someone who has firsthand knowledge of that work. But again, remember, the B2 is not a handyman classification where you just go out and you do a little project here or a little project there. A B2 project consists of 3 individual construction trades being utilized on one project. Can I combine certification forms from certifiers with owner operator information to meet my required time? I'm not sure what you're saying as far as combined certification forms. Each certification form will be certified by one person for a specific time period for the specific trades performed during that time period. If multiple people at different time periods have firsthand knowledge of your work, you would need a separate certification per individual per the specific time period for those trades. If you are self-employed and that is where your experience develop, can your certifier be the property or business owner that you have done work for? Yes, once again, The certifier can be anyone who has firsthand knowledge of the trades that the certifier is going to put down that they have firsthand knowledge if you performed during the time period that they put down that they have firsthand knowledge for. So once again, yes, doesn't have to be a licensed contractor. They just have to have firsthand knowledge of you performing the work that they are going to put down as the trades you have performed.
The question from Elva is, I have a BA and MBA and want to use my education. Can I use it, or do you have to have a construction degree? So short answer is, if you want to use your education as a substitute for education, you can do so. Now, it's not a guarantee if your education will grant you the full 36 months. It's more so of the technician and in some cases, the classification deputy. They'll review your transcript, and depending on how relative it is to the classification they're applied to, that will grant you the credit. So the closer it is to the classification, that will give you more credit. If it's not, then it'll give you a standard. That's why we have that range of anywhere between 18 to 36 months, where it's in relation to the classification. So if you're only relying on education to meet the 4-year requirement, there may be some instances where education may not be enough, but if you do have it, you're more than welcome to include it with your application.
Looks more like a statement. Licensing does not answer. They dissuade you from using education. We will accept all education that comes in, but it will be reviewed at the time your application comes in. So as we explained in the presentation, we can't tell you ahead of time what your experience is going to gather, but all education is reviewed to see if it qualifies for credit towards your experience. We're looking for original transcripts, the degree that you have, and that is contingent upon the classification you have as to how much credit is issued towards that education. But education counts just as actual hands-on experience, but it is not year to year compatible. So 4 years of education is not going to get you 4 years of experience. But absolutely all education is reviewed and given the most credit that can be allowed for education. We would not dissuade anybody from submitting their education and seeing what credit they could get for their degree in all classifications. All right. If we have specific questions about work experience qualifications, is it better to just apply than have the team reply to your application? Once again, we can't pre-evaluate anything until we actually have information that we can review. So the best thing is to, one, look at your application, make sure that you have certifications of work experience that is going to cover 4 years or 48 months in the last 10 years, directly related to the classification you're applying for. And then once you have submitted the application, it will be reviewed. If there are any questions at that point due to what is listed or the amount of time that is listed, then the technician will reach out to you, the applicant, and go over it for any explanations that they need for clarification. I previously held a B license more than 10 years ago, which I let lapse. Do I need to provide work experience and or retake the test? Do I qualify for any waivers? So if it's been more than 10 years ago since you've not been on an active license holding your B classification, you would be required to retest. However, if you can submit the same experience that you used when you got your previous B classification because of having held the class before. So your experience, if you've held the class before, would not be limited to just the last 10 years, because having held the class before, you just need to verify that you had that experience sometime in the past. So if you have your old certification of work experience, you could submit those with the application. You could get the same certifiers that you had back then that certified your work, refill out new ones and send it in. You will need to send in certifications of work experience. You just won't be held to in the last 10 years because you previously held the classification. Did you guys see my question about using two names for my business name? I thought I addressed that, but no, you can't use two names in a sole owner business name. When should one get the live scan? So your live scan packet will be sent out once they have a completed application, and we do what is called post the application. That means we have all the information to verify that you are ready to go to testing. Then they will generate the live scan packet and send that out to you. Are there any resources as to where to go for contractors bonding, typical costs for those bonding requirements? There are lots of bonding companies out there. We don't recommend or have any affiliation with any of them. So anyone that does bonding for contractors, you can go to any of those that you want. I'm sure costs may vary, but you'd have to just shop around, or if you know other contractors, you may be able to get some suggestions from them. Yes, the second name is my dad's name and would like to have it in my business name only. Unfortunately, for a sole owner, you would need to just have the one name. If you did form a corporation, then corporations have different name styles available to them. You would be able to have multiple names in your business name as a corporation if you wanted to go that way, but not as a sole owner. Can you elaborate on the 25,000 contractor surety bond? Is that cash on hand for a sole owner? No, it is a bond issued by a surety company for $25,000 to be placed on your contractor's license. There are cash alternative ones. That is, you submit a cashier's check to the contractor's board that is held on file in lieu of carrying a contractor's bond. That one would require that you have all $25,000 to us. The bond, you're just paying for however much the bonding company will cost you to be covered by a $25,000 contractor's bond. All of that information is in the bond and fee requirements. It's also listed in the law book as to the requirements for the bonding for the $25,000 contractor's bond. If you have a specialty focus, but you want to apply for a B, would it be better to apply for the specialty first and then add B, or apply for the B, then add the specialty? Those kind of decisions are totally up to the licensee or the applicant. Realize the B requires very specific experience, in that you're going to need to show 4 years of doing projects that required framing or structural work, as well as 2 additional trades on the same building project. So if you don't have that experience right off the bat, then obviously you would need to apply for the classifications of which you have 4 years or 48 months in the last 10 years of specific trade work for that specific classification. So once you go to apply to the B, once again, you'll need to show 4 years of experience around building of a structure that also required 2 additional unrelated trades to the carpentry aspect of the project. Let's see here. What is the typical timeline on licensing process? Well, there are numerous factors involved in that. Currently, the only quantifiable time is the time from when you submit your application to when it would be most likely in the hands of a technician to be reviewed. Right now, we're at about 2 weeks. So when you submit your application, within about 2 weeks or so, you would have a technician reviewing your application. Past that, there are many factors involved. So if the application needs corrections, that will go back to you for corrections. That'll depend on how fast you get those corrections back to the technician. Then it will go to the testing side. You have up to 18 months to complete the testing requirements. So once again, it could be as quick as 3 weeks from when you're allowed to go perform your testing, up to 18 months. That once again is on the applicant as how quickly they complete that. And then once the testing is complete, you'll be given instructions on the final issuance requirements, which is your bond, your workers' comp, your initial licensing fee. And once again, that's up to the applicant as to how fast they get that information in. They do only have 90 days from when they complete the testing to get all those issuance requirements in before the license would void out and you would have to reapply. But once again, there's no typical timeline because there are factors involved in how fast the applicant completes certain things and how quickly the application is reviewed and completed. B2 question. Is the proof of experience requirements different? The B2 is the same experience requirements as any other classification, and that is 48 months within the last 10 years of trade work performed specific to that classification. Once again, the B2 for the trade work for the B2 is going to be trade work in 3 different unrelated construction trades. A B2 project is non-structural residential home remodeling of wood structured houses or residences. So it's not going to be commercial work. It's not going to be anything that deals with structural framing. It's going to be a B2 residential remodeling classification. So the trade work is 3 different trades on each project, once again, for a total of 48 months in the last 10 years. What is the benefit of getting an LLC versus a sole ownership if I'm not planning to hire any employees? We don't get involved in what you want to do with the entity of your license. That would be yours. I would say consult with an attorney on the benefits of various entities that you want your business to be in. But we don't give any advice as to how to set up your business structurally that way. Just once you decide what entity you want to get your license in, then we can give you information as to what you need to provide for that specific entity.
If you're looking for requirements on LLCs, each business structure in some instances will require more requirements as far as issuance, so like insurances. So what I'm going to do is include that information in the chat. LLCs are usually require more insurances, so typically that it comes out as more costly. So one thing we would like for you to know is keep in mind on depending on which business structure you want to go for, you want to make sure you look into the insurance requirements or the issuance requirements prior to applying, because a lot of times many applicants may not know what's required, but the LLCs are one of the highest ones. The next question is, just to clarify, if you're applying for sole ownership to work as a self-employed licensed contractor, you do not need to worry about information of employers on the application. So if your work experience was self-employment, you don't necessarily have to apply for sole ownership. The business structure you want to apply to, that would be all up to you. And after talking to either your accountant or attorney or however it is, it's just dependent on which situation works best for you. The work experience when a technician is reviewing it, if your work experience was from self-employment or working under a company or a licensed contractor or a combination of both, that's where they'll review it. And depending on if the work experience needs additional information or clarification, that's where the technician will decide or determine if the 4 years are met, and depending on if you did it in your own house or any other circumstances. But it doesn't necessarily have to limit you to, if you are self-employed, you have to apply for this specific business structure.
All right. Should I go ahead and file for my new business name before filling out the application, or can the application be updated at a later date with my new business name? So it depends on what entity you're going for. Obviously, if you're going for a corporation or an LLC, you need to establish your corporation or LLC at Secretary of State before you can apply for your license here, as you'll need to include those registration numbers on your application, and that your name for your license business will need to match exactly to the name that you're registered at Secretary of State. Keep in mind that your name needs to be compatible with the classification that you are applying for. So just as a kind of a easy example, if you name your corporation ABC Engineering, and you're going for any other classification than a classification of engineering, you would need to add a DBA to your license to be in line with your license classification. So if you registered your name as ABC Engineering at Secretary of State and you're applying for a C33 painting license, when you apply for your license here at CSLB, we will require you to add a DBA to that, to ABC Engineering, DBA, ABC Painting, so that your actual doing business name is compatible with the classification that you're doing. But other than that, we don't tell you what to name your business, other than when you go to get a license, your business name will be needing to be compatible with the entity. In other words, you can't be a sole owner and call yourself a corporation, and it would need to be compatible with the classification that you're going for, or you'll need to add a DBA that clears that up. Is there a person I can email to ask about what licenses I may need in particular? I'll be remodeling houses as an owner builder and also working to rebuild boat docks for other clients. So once again, that is our classifications email. So classifications, plural, at cslb.ca.gov. List all of the trade duties that you're planning to perform, any work that you're planning to perform, how you're planning to perform it. Send that in with as much detail to that email. The classifications deputy will review it and then tell you what classification or classifications you would need to perform all of the work that you have listed that you want to be performing. I'm not sure if somebody sent the law book link again. It's also, if you go to the CSLB website, you can go to the search and just type in 2025 law and business book. It will bring up the link to it. I think it's also under our publications tab on the website as well. But if somebody can also post it here in the chat, we'll see if we can get that back up for you. What are the
Yes,
publications?
I did provide the new link for the law book, so you are able to do it, or it should be able to be accessible. Now, if for whatever reason it doesn't open on our homepage of the CSLB website, you can scroll down to the bottom. We have a box that says what's new, and that will be, the logbook will be available there, the very first link, as well as a publication that is available.
What are the complications with changing business entity following licensing as a sole proprietor without an LLC and changing it to add LLC or to an S corp? So when you're changing the entity of your license, that requires submitting an application to reissue to see if a license number can be reissued to a new license. When you change the entity, you're actually getting a new license. However, under certain circumstances, you are allowed to have your original license number reissued to you. If you are planning to do those kind of changes to your entity of your business and you have a license, please reach out to licensing@cslb.ca.gov. List your license number, list the name of your business, and then list what you are looking to do as far as changing the entity of your business. And we can give you more specific information in your particular case as to whether you can or can't do that and still have your license number reissued to your new entity. If you make the changes first, there are certain changes that you can do at Secretary of State that you can't do with your license entity. And so certain changes from conversions, mergers, and things like that will actually result in the cancellation of your license as opposed to being able to reissue the number to it. So reach out to licensing@cslb.ca.gov with the specifics of your license and what you're looking to do to it, and we can give you more detailed information of what your options are as far as being able to keep your license number or having to get a new license number.
Okay, so there's a question from Keith. He asks, are there trade duties examples? So if you weren't able to download our presentation today, you can also take a look into our archive videos from on our YouTube channel, where there's past webinars, and that's where the recording will also present specific examples of what may be acceptable for a specific classification, and there's an example of what is not acceptable. But for all classifications, we don't have that. But you can take a look at our description of classification book to see the type of trade work that each classification falls under, and the certifier within their own words can detail and explain what work you did performing or supervising in the classification you're applying to.
All right. If one is a non-licensed self-employed and trying to follow proper procedures for obtaining a license, how does one mitigate providing experienced certifiers without the possibility of drawing attention to whether they may or may not have done jobs over the $500 threshold? So we're in the licensing of portion of the CSLB. We're not the enforcement side. So we're interested in what you have actually done, and do you have the experience to get that classification? So we're not looking to see that you didn't work for a contractor or were not employed by a contractor and that you did a project that may have been over $500. We're looking for people who have firsthand knowledge of you performing specific trades related to the classification that you are applying for, and that they can validate that you have done that work so that we can show 48 months in the last 10 years of actual experience in that trade to see that you are qualified to move on to the testing phase and get your license. So we're not looking to see that 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 was a $600 project versus a $500 project that you should have been doing as an unlicensed contractor. So we just want the experience that you have performed that can add up to 48 months of experience in that classification that you are doing, and certified by someone who has firsthand knowledge of you performing that work.
So it looks like a question from Warren is, can you please provide a link to qualifying trades? I did include in the chat the description of classification book, so that way you'll be able to take a look at which classification your work may fall under. So hopefully that will help answer the question. The next question from Marlene is, if the name has been taken, like Diaz Construction, will they let me know it's not available? So if you're referring to, let's say, registering as a corporation or an LLC with the Secretary of State's office, yes, they will. As when you're registering for your business, as you're registering, they will notify you that the name has already been taken. Or if you were applying as a sole proprietor and you're applying for that fictitious name in the county that you're going to be doing the work in, it will also let you know that it may not be acceptable. But it just depending on which business structure you're going for, they will let you know if either as a fictitious name, if it's taken in that county or city that you will be doing the work in, or if it's with the Secretary of State's office, they will let you know.
All right. Out-of-state contractor, any additional requirements? Says something about military and federal lands. So out-of-state contractor is same as someone who has performed work within the state. When you're going to get licensed, we're looking for a certifier or certifiers that can certify for 48 months or 4 years of experience in the classification that you're applying for. And that doesn't matter whether those trade duties were performed out of state or in California. You still need to have a certifier that has firsthand knowledge. If it's out of country, you will need a certifier that has firsthand knowledge in that country of the work that was performed. As far as military and federal lands, if I think I know the section that you're referring to, once again, your certifier does not have to be a contractor to certify your experience. Also, people have performed trade duties in their military experience or on federal lands, which don't require a contractor or a license to perform that work. Once again, that can still be counted as experience, even though it was not performed for a licensed contractor. But once again, you will need to have somebody who can certify firsthand knowledge of you performing that work, even when it's in a situation where a licensed contractor was not required to perform that work. Looks like we're down to what class is for a new home builder. Well, once again, typically that is your B classification, a general contractor, because for building an entirely new home, you're going to have structural work and multiple other trades performed within building that home. So typically that is a B classification. Once again, if you're unsure of the classification, you can go to classifications at cslb.ca.gov, explain exactly all of the work that you're planning to be performing, and they will give you the classification that you would need to apply for on your license to be able to perform that work. Will work as an owner builder for 4 years combined with separate work noted by a certifier 3 years meet my 4 years required. Once again, we can't pre-qualify anybody. We're looking for 4 years of documented experience within the last 10 years. But also remember that work as an owner builder still requires a certifier. So there is a separate form that you will fill out for an owner builder project experience form in addition to a certification of work experience form. So for owner builder work, you're going to have a certification of work experience form that is filled out by your certifier, of somebody who has firsthand knowledge of you doing that owner builder work, as well as an owner builder project experience form that is going to require you to list the permits that were issued, square footage, time frame. It will ask that you are the actual owner, and that's your residence building. It will also ask you any other contractors that were utilized, how many people you had working on the project, all the trades involved. So for owner builder experience to count towards your experience, you need the same as always, a certifier, certification of work experience with somebody who has firsthand knowledge of the work performed other than yourself. And then you will need to fill out the owner builder construction project experience form for the more detail for each owner builder project. Are permits required for qualifying work? Not always. But if you're applying for a B classification, for an example, for you to have gotten true B classification experience, you're going to be working on a structure of some type. There are very few structural projects that would not require a permit involved. So obviously, if you're going for a painting classification, permits aren't always required for painting. However, if you're going for a classification that typically needs a permit, then obviously a permit would have been pulled for that work. We don't look for a permit in the initial certification of work experience. We're looking for someone who has firsthand knowledge of you performing that work within the last 10 years. When you get into owner builder experience, yes, when you fill out the owner builder experience project form, there will be a section that requires you to put any permits related to that. And remember, owner builder experience is only for the B classification. So obviously there would be permits involved for structural building.
All right, so it looks like that's all the time we have for today for our workshop. Thank you for all of your questions. If you have any other questions about your application, we encourage you to drop an email to our licensing division. Here is that email address, licensing@cslb.ca.gov. That's licensing@cslb.ca.gov. I'll also include it again in the chat just in case you are unable to see it in the earlier mentions. So if at some point you need to reschedule your exam, you can get that process started by contacting PSI through their website. I'll also include that in the chat as well. So that way you have the direct contact information. I will include the link to their website if you want to do it online. You can also call them at 877-392-6422. Be sure to include your name and your application fee number. We've also put together a list of available resources for women considering a career in construction. If you haven't already, be sure to download this presentation to get them. You can download the presentation on the banner of the top of our homepage at www.cslb.ca.gov. If you're watching the archive video of this workshop on our YouTube page, you'll find a link to the presentation down below. We welcome your comments and topics for future webcasts. Just give us an email to social@cslb.ca.gov. Special thanks to our licensing division and public affairs office for their help on this workshop. The Get Licensed to Build workshop is a copyrighted production of the California Contractor State License Board. Thank you for watching and have a great day.